Welcome to the Prison Professors Podcast. We serve people who face challenges with prosecution, sentencing, and prison. My co-founders are Sean Hopwood and Justin Paperny. My name is Michael Santos. We create digital content and our team offers individual consulting services. We also assist agencies that want to improve outcomes. To learn how we can help you, text the word Prison Pro to 44222. Again, text Prison Pro to 44222 and get our free brochure. You can also visit us at prisonprofessors.com or contact Justin at 818-424-2220. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Send confirmation that you reviewed our podcast and we'll send you a free digital book. Stay tuned for a 20 to 30-minute episode of Prison Professors. Welcome to Prison Professors. I am Michael Santos. Today we are going to listen to episode 2 with Lynn Espejo. Lynn was a target of the criminal justice system and she was prosecuted. And in yesterday's episode, she told us about what it was like to face an indictment, to have an indictment dismissed, then to be charged once again. She told us about the costs of going to trial. She told us about the challenges that she and her family have faced with regard to expenses and going through multiple procedures in the judicial system and eventually being convicted. Today we are going to listen to Lynn speak with us about her experiences after a jury returned a guilty verdict. And we're going to start by, first of all, welcoming you back again, Lynn, to our program. And I'd love for you to continue telling us your story about what happened after a jury returned a guilty verdict.
Thank you, Michael. Well, the next step in the process is what's called the PSI-PSR report. And in that report, that's when you go back over to your pretrial probation office, but this is a different area of that office that does these reports. And, you know, again, I was shocked how much control a government prosecutor even has of this, even though the PSR, the probation office, they supposedly work for the court, the judge, not the government. Well, not the prosecuting, the U.S. Attorney's Office. But again, the U.S. Attorney's Office gets to tell them their narrative of what they say you did, and by this time you're already found guilty of it or have took a plea deal, I guess in some cases, and said you did it. So you don't have much control over that narrative of what that report follows you throughout the entire process from this point forward. That report is used by the judge in sentencing. That report is also, from my understanding, sent to the BOP, and that report follows you around even afterwards, I think, to your probation officer. So once you're out of the...
What level of preparation did you have before you met with your probation officer to learn about this pre-sentence investigation process?
Absolutely zero. My attorneys that went to trial with me, of course, I'll just say this. They didn't even turn over discovery to the government. We weren't even able to put on exhibits the week of trial, but that's a whole nother issue. But so, they just basically told me, I got a call from the probation pretrial, and they said I need to come over and meet with them and do my PSR. And I'm like, what is that? And she's like, well, I have to do a report on you to talk about all your background and, your family and, so you're going to have to come meet with me. So I said, well, let me call my attorney. So I called my attorney and he's like, oh, just go on up there and talk to him. Tell them whatever they want to know. No big deal. So I went and met with her and answered all her questions. You have to take them proof of your high school diploma, proof of your college degree or any, degrees after that you have. You have to take the medical records if you want that to be incorporated into the report. If you have any medical issues, for instance, I have a torn rotator cuff that needs surgery. So, obviously I wanted that to be known. They ask you your family history, a lot of personal questions, mental illnesses in your family, if there were any, or any substance abuses in your family. Have you been abused? I guess as a child, most of that did not apply to me. So, it went fairly quick. They want to know, they make you sign a bunch of forms giving them permission, I think, to check your credit, to check your criminal background, to check anything you tell them, they're going to verify. So they want you to sign off, letting them call any past employers and get information, past high schools, colleges, wherever you've gone. Regardless of what you bring them, you sign off for them to verify that. But not only do you have to give them that, you also have to give them all your assets, all your financial documents. And the shocking thing was, because I'm married, I had to give them my husband's information. So not only do they want to know where all your finances are, a person that's not even convicted of any crime nor was indicted in any crime is forced to give these people all their private financial information. How much is in your bank account? Where is your 401ks? Where else do you have money invested? What cars do you own? What property do you own? It was shocking to me. But anyway, so they get all that and they come up with this report. The government gives them their whatever side. In my case, the government decided me getting found guilty of all charges was not good enough for them. They had threatened me if I did not take a plea deal and I took this to trial, that they would add all these enhancements. Now, enhancements are extra points that make you move up the sentencing guideline, which to me, that chart's already kind of complicated. Once you figure it out, it's not. But, wire fraud starts out, I think, at a 7. And then because it was money laundering, or, they look at the amount and that makes it go up to however many more points. And then money laundering adds an additional point. And then because I had 3 charges, you have to get into all that grouping. So then that adds 2 more points. So by the time you get just that done, you're up to, I want to say 56 months in jail to 60 something months. I'd have to look back, but it was, it was an astronomical amount already. Well, then the government comes back and says, oh, and by the way, we want to get 2 points added to each one of these charges for obstruction of justice, because they said that at the grand jury, I didn't even know what I was being, investigated for. They would not tell me. But Pat Harris was asking me about my tax returns, and the questions he was asking me made it sound like to me that he was saying I had not filed taxes for those years. And I was like, no, I did my returns. I filed my returns. Well, at trial, it came up. The U.S. attorney asked me who prepared our tax returns. And I was honest and said my husband, who's a CPA. And she asked me where they were filed. Well, 2 years was filed electronically, which meant they were filed at his office, because that was just a free service you got if you worked there. So they came back and said that I had lied at the grand jury or at trial 1. Okay. I think a lot of people don't do their tax returns themselves, and you may or may not do yours. But I think the common statement is, I did my taxes. I filed my taxes. I mean, that doesn't mean you personally sit down and did the return. Preparing a return and filing a return are absolutely 2 different, things. But they tried to use a play on words to get me for obstruction of justice. And then they said I violated a position of trust, which is 2 more points to all 3 of those charges. Then they said that I used sophisticated means to commit a crime because because I had accounting knowledge, I had an accounting degree. So that added 2 more points to each one of those charges. So by the time they tried to add all that, I was looking at 8 to 13 years in prison. And so at this point, I was asking my attorneys if they would write what I had done my research and found out was a pre-sentence memorandum. And they were telling me, no, that's going to give the government a heads up on our arguments. Oh, well, let me back up. The government also wanted put in the PSR that I had made false reports on Pat Harris and that IRS agent, Jack Shortway. And I was like, okay, what false reports? First of all, I reported Pat Harris to the DOJ and our local professional conduct for attorneys because, number one, during the second indictment, during pretrial, we caught him red-handed hiding exculpatory evidence. And for your viewers that does not know what that means evidence that went directly to proof that I was not guilty of this crime. And then also we caught the IRS agent. He had to admit on the stand that he had sent that email with my tax returns and shared them. Well, actually, he lied on the stand about that, and we put the guy he had sent them to on the stand, and he brought out the emails and everything and showed where he got the tax return.
Let me interject here for a moment, Lynn, and just summarize this PSR. Really, what we're learning is that the pre-sentence investigation report is incredibly complex. And a lot of times people, after they've been convicted, they go through the pre-sentence investigation without a firm or a clear understanding of how important this investigation is going to be, how it can influence not only the sentence, but also the journey through prison, possibilities for access to programs while in prison, and possibility to influence release dates and the level of liberty somebody can have when they're on release. So it's very important. And it doesn't sound like Lynn had the type of guidance that would help her prepare for this very important journey. Now you have gone through the pre-sentence investigation report. You've learned a lot, and it sounds like you're advising other people to educate themselves as much as they possibly can about the pre-sentence investigation report before they meet with probation.
Absolutely, and don't depend on your lawyer. My lawyer told me I was contacted by people that were prison consultants, as yourself. Is not you didn't contact me, but I'm saying I was contacted by people in that profession, and I asked my attorney about it, and they said, "Oh, those people are quacks." Well, no, I have found out that I really should have hired somebody that understood this process, because it's well worth the money to get good advice, because you're going through a process, and you're really, to be honest, your attorney is pretty much, I have found, they've got so many cases, they're overloaded. You're just, one stack of paper on their desk, and it's your life, not theirs. They're not that attentive to you. And you're basically going through this process blind, being blind with blinders on, and you're not getting good advice, because when you're talking to your attorney, they have a very small, limited amount of time to talk to you. And honestly, I'm not sure many of them understand how significant the PSR is.
So let's just pause there for a second, because the reality is, certainly somebody who's gone through the system can offer some guidance and some suggestions that people can do to ease the journey ahead and to prepare for a successful journey ahead. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't afford, by the time they've gone through the criminal justice system, they have already exhausted all of their funds, understandably. But even if you can't afford to hire somebody, there's a lot of free information out there that can help people, like Lynn is giving us right now. I mean, this is free information that she's spent a lot of money and is going to be paying for a lot in her life, and we can learn a lot just by listening to her. There's a lot of information online. Certainly, if you can afford to hire somebody to take the time to learn your case, that could be of value as well. But I really am interested in this latter portion of this episode, number 2, to learn more about what ultimately happened to Lynn and what is going forward in the future, because you still have to eventually got sentenced. Then you are getting designated into the prison system. And I want to hear a little bit about what preparations you are making for that journey ahead, so that you don't have more surprises ahead of you.
Okay, well, so like I said, the government was trying to get these enhancements, and I was asking my attorney to write what's called a pre-sentence memorandum, and they kept telling me, no, that gives the government a head up. But everything I was researching and reading told me we needed to have one of those. So ultimately, I fired those attorneys. We had to cough up $10,000 more dollars just to hire somebody to go with me to sentencing and write a pre-sentence report. So we did that. We argued that those enhancements did not apply. We went to a sentencing hearing in September. And here's another thing that's very important: character reference letters. I had 65 I had got together, because every time someone contacted me that found out about it and said, hey, what can I do to help? I said, here's what you can do. Write a letter about what you know about me and my character. And so 65 people ended up writing letters between the people I asked to write them and the people that came to me asking, what can I do? My attorney did not want to turn those in. He was like, oh, the judge is not going to read those. But my gut was telling me that I needed to turn these in. Had I had a prison consultant, I would have had someone to help me with the narrative of these letters. I would have had someone telling me, yes, you need to turn these in, helping my attorney along the way with that. But instead, I had an attorney telling me, no, the attorney I fired didn't even want to turn them in at all. Then he said, okay, we'll turn in 10 of them. Like I said, I fired them, got a new attorney to go with me to sentencing. They did not want to turn all the letters in either. But I said, look, these people have taken their time. I want people to come speak on my behalf. They discourage that too. I want, the letters turned in. So anyway, finally, the week of sentencing came down to September the 22nd. My attorney finally filed a pre-sentence memorandum that week, just a few days before sentencing, which it should have been filed a long time before. But in their defense, they had only had my case for a month by the time we went to sentencing. So in their defense, you know, they really had not had all the time that my other attorney had. But I made them turn in all 65 letters. I think I took a few out because a few of them said I was innocent and that they didn't believe this, not, you know, so the ones that said that, I took those out. But the other ones that just talked about my character, my volunteer work, you know, the kind of person I was, we turned in. We get there on the 22nd. We argue the enhancements. The judge does something out of character. She mentions those character reference letters multiple times and how she had read them. She took my sentencing under advisement. My lawyers have not seen that happen in my district before, and it's obviously not something that happens a lot. I think it may happen, but it doesn't happen a lot. So she reset it. She took that under advisement. She reset it for November the 3rd. She ruled in the meantime, a few days before we went on November the 3rd, she ruled against the government on those enhancements. So at that point, I knew I was looking at 50, 60, whatever it was, months. It was shocking, but I knew I was looking at still a ton of time, because once you get the money laundering and all the groupings that happens, it does rack the time up. So we get in there on the 3rd, and of course, before this happens, you know, victim impact statements happened. A couple of the doctors came up there, not the doctor that I had charged stuff for. He didn't show up. But a couple of the other doctors that probably don't know the truth of what happened came up there and gave their victim impact statement. That was in the September hearing. And my attorneys put my pastor and a couple of other friends up there to talk about my character. So the judge took that under advisement, like I said. Then we get the order where she denied their enhancements. We get there on November the 3rd. And, of course, the government's arguing for me to get the maximum amount of time. And I'm assuming that they do that in every case. And my attorney is arguing for me to get actually probation. And so the judge takes all that under advisement. She mentions the character reference letters multiple more times in this hearing. So those made an impact on her. She goes back to her chambers and she comes back, and you have to go up there and stand. And believe me, you're weak in the knees and you have all these emotions. The courtroom, you know, is packed with my family and friends, so they're going through all these emotions as well. So she gave me a 2-point variance for my character, which made the 56 to whatever go down to 41 to 51 months. And then she, in turn, gave me 45 months. And I am reporting, she also asked me at that time where I wanted to go. Luckily, I had read up, you know, there's no local prisons close to me for women, federal. So I had done some research on my own, which had I had a prison consultant, again, you know, they would have been advising me along this path. But I gave no allocation at trial or at sentencing, because I'm appealing, because, you know, I could not get up there and say I was remorseful for a crime I didn't commit. I was willing to get up there and say I was remorseful for not listening to red flags, for feeling in the back of my mind that what I was doing for him probably was helping him hide income after I really got, you know, further along into that process and my gut started telling me something's not right here. I was willing to get up and talk about that, but my attorneys would not allow me. They told me, no, that would hurt me. Looking back, I'm not really sure it would have, because she knew that I had maintained my innocence, and I think the judge wants to hear from the person sitting there. Obviously, if you've taken a plea deal, you're in a different position to get up there and say that. And again, I was remorseful for the part I feel I played in the process. And what got me there, I was just not remorseful for wire fraud, money laundering, tax fraud, crimes I had not committed. But at any rate, I did not give it what is called I think it's allocation. I did not give that statement because my attorneys advised me against it. I did get, like I said, the 45 months. She asked me where I wanted to be designated, and because I had done my own research, because my attorney just looked at me like, where do you want to go? He had no clue. And I did say Bryan, Texas, or I said Texas. And because I had looked at Bryan being a federal prison camp, and they have a lot of programs for women. And so anyway, she but basically that's it. You go back up to the marshal's office, you take a fingerprint, because you've already been there and given them your DNA and fingerprints when you first get indicted. So you just go back up there and give them one little print on a piece of paper. And she did let me stay out on pretrial release. The government actually didn't even object to that. So I was supposed to report on January the 8th, but I had an appeal attorney that got appointed to my case for the appeal, and he had it extended till February 26th, because at first it said I had to report to the marshal's office, because my attorney that day in court somehow gave the judge the impression I wanted to report to the marshals instead of self-report. He asked her on January the 8th, if I didn't have my designation yet, should I just report to the local marshal's office? Why he asked that, I have no clue. Again, that's something he probably shouldn't have said, because it confused the judge. And when I got my judgment and commitment, it said I was to report to the marshal's office. Well, I don't know if your listeners know this, but my research told me if I reported there, it gave me a higher security level within the prison. Probably wouldn't have really hurt me in my case, since I probably got a really low one anyway. But you don't really want to be able to self-surrender to the actual prison, because it does put you in the best light. So he petitioned the court for me to be able to do that. And of course, she did grant it. The government objected to it, but she did grant it. And so I'm self-reporting. In the meantime, I've done a lot more research, watched videos, tried to, figure out, talk to people that's been in prison, figure out, what I'm expecting there. What can I do to make the best possible outcome there? What kind of job will I get? Those kind of things. Just the questions I think anybody that's never been in any kind of criminal setting would have. And I think, again, that's where a prison consultant could very well help you. I did hire a prison consultant after I was sentenced, but unfortunately they were unethical and were telling me to do things that I could not do. They wanted me to lie to a therapist. They wanted me to go get drugs and take them into prison with me. Just things that were.
Who's that?
That was RDAP Law Consultants. And I will tell anybody out there listening, if you see their name, run as fast as you can. They go by fake names. They're not honest at all. They have been in prison, but they'll tell you they haven't. They go by fake names. The real owner, the one that goes by the name of On, that was telling me to do all the illegal stuff, his real name is Tony Pham. And he was in jail with a guy named Daniel Art Barnacle. And both of them use fake names to run the company. And they're just unethical. I mean, the things they were telling me to do, I knew logically didn't make sense to me. Now, someone that hasn't been going through this system for 7 years may have thought, okay, this is what I got to do. Because I remember how panicked I was during the first indictment, but once you've gone through it for a little while, you start doing your own research. And what they were telling me did not make sense. So I fired them, because of, number one, I'm not going to go to the doctor and take a family member and get drugs I don't need and take them into the prison. I read out there on Ripoff Report that they have another report of somebody saying they did this to their family member, and their family member actually ended up in the SHU for following RDAP Law Consultants' advice.
Did you get a refund from them because of the way that you were served? Did they refund your money? Yes,
they gave me a refund and actually even offered me $300 more, which I feel like was to try to keep me from alerting others to what they're up to. Of course, once I exposed them publicly for what they did, then they went and made a police report on me saying I was harassing them. So, they're not ethical. But I would say a good ethical consultant is worth the money, because had I had somebody walking through me, like I would wish I had somebody before the PSR report. I wish I'd have had somebody to tell me, hey, write a narrative to the judge. I didn't do that. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know about taking a narrative to PSR. I didn't know how much I needed to object to what was wrong in the PSR, and that's still wrong in my PSR, because I had no clue that that was going to follow me around everywhere. Now, the RDAP program can help you get time off. I actually could qualify for that program had I had it put in my PSR, because during the time that after the sexual assault, I was using a prescription I had for an anxiety medicine. I was using it to get to sleep at night. Okay. Apparently that is not the way I should have been using the prescription. It's not what the bottle said. And so, that would have helped qualify me for the program. But again, I was told by my attorney not to say anything about that to the PSR person because that would look bad to the judge. So you get all kinds of bad advice throughout this process where had you went with someone that had been through it, such as yourself, you could have got advice that would have been invaluable to you.
Whether it's advice that it's the reality is the more you learn, the better you're able to make decisions. What's right for you? RDAP is right for some people. It's not right for all people. There are ups and downs, but what's really important is that a defendant understands how every decision can influence the future. And I think that defendants should do exactly what you're advising, which is to empower themselves by learning a little bit more about the system, as much as they possibly can about the system, take all of that information into their calculus so that they can make a better, more informed decisions, even interacting with their counsel more intelligently and from a higher level of confidence. I'm really sorry that you went through this process with so many blinders on you, Lynn, but I am hopeful that you're able to make the most of your journey in prison. And perhaps we should do actually a third episode, because we've already expanded this second episode. In the first episode, which we presented yesterday, first of all, do you have time for a third episode, Lynn?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in the first episode for listeners, we listened to Lynn talk with us about facing criminal charges and going into the criminal justice system, and we learned about the costs of going to trial, the dangers of dealing with attorneys who are not necessarily advising a defendant on what's to come. In this episode, we learned a lot about preparing for the pre-sentence investigation and preparing for sentencing. And in this final episode, which will last about another 30 minutes and it will be aired tomorrow, we're going to talk about how do you prepare to serve a 45-month sentence in federal prison. So we'll be back tomorrow with another episode from Lynn learning about the prison journey. I want to say, if you want any more information on Prison Professors, please visit us at prisonprofessors.com or text the word Prison Pro to 44222, and we will send you a brochure that talks about how we help, how you can get free information, or how you can get courses and so on and so forth that will help you through the journey. We'll be back tomorrow with another final episode of Lynn Espejo. Thank you.